Hello, my CFA friends. How are you, my friends? And welcome to our first module on loops in Python programming. Today, we're looking at the for loop, and in the next module, we're going to look at the while loop. So, focusing on the for loop today, I'm also going to introduce the range object, which allows us to generate a sequence of numbers. And the video will culminate with a challenge that will test you on everything you've learned so far on the course. And that is a classical coding challenge called FizzBuzz challenge. So stay tuned for that. And definitely, I'm going to be interested to see if you guys are going to be able to solve that challenge without my help. So let's get started. First, I want to introduce the for loop with a very, very simple example. So let's start by defining a variable. It's going to be a string, and it's simply going to have the letters CFA. Now, what I want to do with this string is I want to loop through each member of that string, in this case, each letter of the string. So I want to get the letter C, then the letter F, and then the letter A. So I can use a for loop for this. So what I can say is for, and for is a keyword in Python. Notice here the special color there. Orange in PyCharm shows you that that's a reserved keyword. So Python understands it as a loop. So what we're going to say for letter, so letter here will be a variable holding, you guessed it, the letter of the word. Then we're going to use the keyword in, and then we're going to write word. So it pretty much flows as normal everyday language. So if you're thinking about it, you're going to say for each letter in the word, so for each letter, for C, for F, and for A in this word, do something. And then, of course, we are finishing the line with our colon, pressing enter. Notice here we're getting the automatic indentation. And what we're going to say is that we want to simply print the letter. So we are ready. Shift F10, and let's see what happens down here. And I can see that the first line printed C, then we printed F, and then we printed A. Next, I want to print a sequence of numbers. Enter a super useful function that comes with Python. It's a built-in function, which is the range function. In later videos, we are going to define functions and talk about their parameters and arguments and code the functions and do all sorts of wonderful things with functions, but that will happen in a much later video. For now, all we want to do is generate a sequence of numbers using the range function. So what we're going to do, again, we're going to use a loop. So we're going to say for number in range 10, and I want to explain what I mean by that. So the range function here will generate a sequence of numbers starting with 0. So in programming, often, if not always, we want to start with 0. So a lot of our sequences will have an index of 0 at the start. And then I'm going to go all the way up to 10, but not including 10. So I'm going to go 0, 1, 2, and so on and so forth up to 9. So what I can do here is I can simply print the number. So again, I want to go from 0 to 10, but not including 10. Let's see if that's going to work. And let's check. I've started at 0, and then I'm going all the way to 9. Now, I can improve on this range function. So, for example, if I wanted to start at a non-zero value, that is possible. So I could say 1, 10. And in this case, if I rerun this, you will notice that I started at 1 rather than 0. And also, you could define a step to this function. So after the 10, we can have a comma 2. And that means that every time we produce a new number, it will have gone up by 2. So the first number will be at position 1. So 1, the second number will be 1 plus 2, 3, the third number will be 5, and so on. So we rerun this again, and we see 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Add 2 to 9, we get 11. Well, that's, of course, outside of our range. When we are using loops, sometimes we want to exit the loop prematurely or break out of the loop. So if I go for a number in a range 10, I could say if the number is equal, and here remember that the comparison operator is double equals. If the number is equal to 5, then what should happen? Well, I may want to exit the loop. Otherwise, what I will do is I will just simply print the number. So before I run Shift F10, I want us actually to think about what should happen. So of course, the first line is generating numbers from 0 to 9. But when we hit the number 5, we will enter this if statement, at which point we will exit the loop. So no further numbers will be generated. So what I'm expecting to see is I should start at 0, then go up to 1, 2, 3, and 4. But will I be printing 5? No, I won't, because before the print statement gets executed, I will break out of the loop. So if I run Shift F10, I can see that I've generated the number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I've exited the loop. I could, however, modify this loop by changing the word break to the keyword continue. Now, what do you think will happen if I change to the word continue? And let me explain what continue does. It doesn't completely exit the loop, but it stops the current iteration. So in other words, it will skip the current iteration. And pause the video and think about what this might look like in terms of our results. And when you're ready, I'll tell you what it should do. Well, when we get to the number 5, we are going to enter again the if statement, and the keyword continue will simply say skip that iteration. So for that iteration, do not execute whatever comes down here. So we shouldn't see the number 5 ever printed, but we should still see all the numbers from 0 to 9 except 5. Okay, hopefully that's going to happen. Shift F10, and let's see, we're starting at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but now we are skipping over 5, going 6, 7, 8, and 9. So just to summarize, the keyword break breaks out of the loop completely, so it will continue executing whatever code comes after your loop in your program, but the keyword continue will stay within the loop. It will continue looping, however, it will skip the current iteration. The next example brings us back to the 1700 and great mathematician Gauss. So Gauss was a little child at the time, and he was at school, and his teacher gave the class a challenge. He said, take all numbers from 1 to 100 and add them up and tell me what the sum is. And the teacher was expecting that the kids will have to work on this for a couple of hours, so he'll have some quiet time. However, little Gauss essentially returned within minutes, giving the correct answer. So write down in the comments if you know what the trick is to solve this really, really quickly. So adding up all the numbers from 1 to 100. But of course, we will use the loop logic that we've just learned to solve this here in Python. The best way to learn, my friends, is not to passively just enjoy the video, but do pause the video and try to solve the challenges that I'm giving you. So the current challenge is to take all numbers from 1 to 100, add them up, and then print the result. I want to know what is the sum of all numbers from 1 to 100. When you're ready, please unpause the video and let's see how I solve it. I will first initialize a variable called total, and let's give it the value of 0. Now, remember, I need to go through all the numbers from 1 to 100. So I'm going to say for number in range. So the starting position will be given as 1. Remember, the default is 0. So we need to specify that we want to start at 1. We want to go all the way to 100. So be careful here. Did you write 100 or did you write 101? Because you should remember that we are going up to the second number, but not including that number. So if you had written 100, we would have gone from 1 to 99, and that would give us the incorrect answer. In this case here, we will be going from 1 to 100. And for each loop, what we will do is we'll take the total, and our total will be equal to the previous total plus the number from the current iteration. So for example, in the first iteration, total has been initialized to 0. So I'll take 0 plus number. Well, the number in the first iteration is 1. So I'll get 0 plus 1 equals 1. Then I'll move to the second iteration. I'll take the total of 1 and add the second number, which is 2, and I'll get a total of 3, and so on and so forth. At the end of this challenge, I'm going to want to print the total. So let's run this, Shift F10, and I can see the answer is 5050, which is in fact what Gauss was able to produce within seconds. So I also want to teach you something else. Can you see here that in this line, we are actually repeating the word total a couple of times? And in programming, it is very, very important to not repeat yourself. Try to be as efficient as possible. So the minute you see that you're repeating a variable twice or some kind of code twice, this essentially means there is an opportunity for code optimization. So here, Python comes with this funky syntax, and I know it's not very beginner friendly because everybody can understand what this is doing. The new total is the old total plus the number from the current iteration. Everybody can understand that, but there is a succinct or concise way of writing that. And this is simply to say total plus equals number. Okay, it's not very beginner friendly, but it essentially means the same thing. So if you remember here, we can comment with hashtag. So we can basically write for ourselves a little note that essentially what this is doing is it's taking the old total and then it is adding the number to obtain the new total. So even if you don't believe me, let's rerun the program. Now we should still be getting 5050. And yes, we got 5050. And now this is the most exciting moment so far on the Python course, guys, because we are going to look at a classical coding challenge that is given in coding interviews. It's the FizzBuzz challenge, and it's going to test you on everything you have learned up to this point in the course. So yes, you might have thought that some of the videos were really basic and you glanced over them or you skipped them, but it is useful. Everything I've covered so far has been important for this upcoming challenge. And before we start, I want to quickly remind you that this here is my website, stoyanov.co.uk, where you can get my CFA courses. Okay, the question-based revision is there. All the videos, tuition videos are there. Please check it out. It's a very, very cheap monthly subscription. Okay, let's look at the FizzBuzz challenge. So we are going to count from 1 to 100. It's like a kid's game, right? So I'm going to count from 1 to 100, but for each number that is divisible by 3, instead of saying 3, I will say fizz. So, for example, 1, 2, fizz, because 3 is divisible by 3. And then when I get to 6, I will have to say Fizz. And when I get to 9, I'll have to say Fizz again. For each number that is divisible by 5, I'll say Buzz. So numbers like 5 and 10, I should say Buzz, or I should print Buzz in my program. But if a number is divisible by both 3 and 5, then I should say FizzBuzz. So, for example, when I get to 15, I should say FizzBuzz, or let's say 30, I should say FizzBuzz. For every other number, so any number that is not divisible by 3 or not divisible by 5, just regular numbers, we will simply print the number. Okay, so now you've got all the tools in your toolbox. I really want you to give yourself 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it takes. Work through this challenge. I'll give you a little hint. You're gonna need some information from the operators video. In particular, you will need the mod operator. For this challenge, you're going to need some if statements as well. You're going to need a range object. You're going to need a for loop. Enjoy this challenge, and when you're ready to see the solution, unpause the video. All right, I hope you enjoyed the challenge. Write in the comments if you managed to solve it without my help, but let's get started. So for a number in range 1 to 101, so we are counting all the way to 101, but not including 101. What we are going to do is we're going to use an if statement, and we're going to say that if the number. Now, how are we going to know if a number is divisible by, let's say, 3? Well, I gave you a little hint. We're going to use the mod operator, because if we were to divide a number by 3 and get a remainder of 0, that means the number was divisible by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, remainder 0. 6 divided by 3 is 2, remainder 0, and so on and so forth. So if the number is divisible by 3, its mod should be 0, its remainder should be 0. So from a prior video, we know that the mod operator is the percentage symbol. So if the number divided by 3 is equal to 0, so that number is divisible by 3, and the number is also divisible by 5. So when you divide it by 5, its remainder is 0. Well, in that case, we want to print. What did we want to print? What was the rule? FizzBuzz. Okay, so that's basically taking care of numbers like 15 and 30. Next line, we will have an elif statement. So again, we will have an if statement here, but it's essentially else if. So we've exhausted the most comprehensive case. But if a number is not divisible by both 3 and 5, then maybe it's only divisible by 3. So we will write if the number, when divided by 3, gives me a remainder of 0, then I should print the word fizz. Okay? Then if the number is not divisible by 3, maybe it's divisible by 5. So we'll have an elif statement here where we say if the number, when divided by 5, gives me a remainder of 0, well, in this case, I need to print the word buzz. And if none of this apply, then I should have an else statement with a colon, and here I should simply print the number. Okay, let's see if this works. Shift F10, and let's go through all the numbers. Okay, so maybe we will just expand this a little bit. 1, 2, 3 is divisible by 3, so we print fizz. 4, 5 is divisible by 5, so we print buzz. 6, fizz. 7, 8, 9 is divisible only by 3, so fizz. 10 is divisible by 5, so buzz. 11, 12 is divisible by 3, 13, 14, and then 15 is divisible by both 3 and 5. So we print FizzBuzz and so on and so forth. If we go down to 30, we should see FizzBuzz again. And if we go down to 45, we should see FizzBuzz again, and so on and so forth. Now, one common question that people may have is, will it work if we had if number is divisible by 3 or number mod 3 is equal to 0 came before that first statement? And the answer is it's not going to work, my friends, because the code is getting executed sequentially. So if, for example, you put the top line in the if statement saying number mod 3 equals 0, and let's say we were looking at the number 15, well, when we divide 15 by 3, we get a remainder of 0. So if we put this line as the first line, we will not get the desired result, because for 15 it will print fizz, and similarly, if this was our first line, for 15 it would print buzz, whereas we want for 15 to print FizzBuzz. So as a general rule of thumb, when we're using if statements, I want the most comprehensive statement to come first, because if that statement is wrong, then I can look at the edge cases. Okay, so that's everything I had for you in this module. I hope you found it useful. You can see here that the level of difficulty has increased. In the next module, we shall look at while loops. But until then, have a great day.